Hi, second grade. Today is the math video for Tuesday, April 21st, 2020, day 15 of your work packet. We are going to start with fluency. You are going to be completing the pattern. For this first pattern, take a minute to look at it. You can pause the video and try to see what the pattern is. Are the numbers getting bigger or smaller? Are the hundreds, the tens, or the ones changing? See if you can fill in the missing parts. Let's go over it together. The first thing I noticed looking at this pattern is that the numbers are getting bigger. So I'm going to write plus because I can tell that in this pattern, we are adding something. I can also tell by looking at the numbers in this pattern that the ones are staying the same. There are 4 ones. And the tens are staying the same. There are 5 tens. The only thing that's changing is the hundreds. So this pattern is a plus 100 pattern. Now that we know that, we can easily fill in the missing parts. 354 plus 100 is 454. Plus 100 is going to be 554. Our tens and our ones are staying the same. 100 more is 654. 100 more is 754. And then 854. Great job. Take a minute to pause the video for the second pattern. See what's changing and if you can fill in the missing numbers. Looking at this second pattern, I noticed that again, the numbers are getting bigger. So I'm going to put a plus sign next to it. We are adding something in this pattern. I also noticed looking at this pattern that our ones are staying the same. There are 8 ones in every single number I see. I also noticed that our tens are changing. Here there are 7 tens, here there are 8 tens, here there's 1 10, and here there's 2 tens. But this is tricky because our hundreds are also changing. Here there's 100, 100, and then it goes to 200 and 200. Why could that be? Think back to what we've talked about in class. Now, I think that this is a tens pattern, even though the hundreds are changing. The reason I think it's a tens pattern and we're adding 10 is because when we get 10 tens, we bundle it to make 100. So I think that the only reason our hundreds are changing is because we got 10 tens, so we bundled them to make a new 100. So if our tens are changing, let's take a look. 178 plus 10 is 188. Plus 10 is going to be 198. Plus 10, this is a little bit tricky. I have 9 tens. What's going to happen if I add another 10? If I add another 10, I'm going to have 10 tens and I'm going to bundle. So it is going to make a new 100. So next is going to be 208. Then 218 and 228. For the next pattern, pause the video again and see if you can see what type of pattern it is and what numbers are missing. Looking at this next pattern, I notice that the numbers are getting smaller. So I am going to write a minus sign. We are taking something away in this pattern. Now what's changing? Are the hundreds, the tens, or the ones changing? I notice that there are 5 ones in all of these numbers. There are also 5 tens in all of these numbers. The only thing changing is the hundreds place. So this is a minus 100 pattern. Now it's a little bit tricky because we're missing the first number. The second number is 655. So what minus 100 would be 655? 755 minus 100 would be 655. Minus 100 is 555. Minus 100 will be 455. Minus 100 is 355. And minus 100 is 255. Great job. We have one more pattern. Pause the video while you look at it. 810 blank, 810 blank 790, 780. Take a minute to look at this pattern and see if you can figure out what is missing and what type of pattern it is. Now I notice that the numbers are getting smaller again. We start with 800s and then we go down to 700s. So I'm going to put a minus next to it. Now how is this pattern changing? The ones are staying the same. There are 0 ones. I see that the tens are changing, but my hundreds are also changing. Here it's 810 and here it's only 700. But I think my hundreds are changing for the same reason that they changed in my second pattern. I think my hundreds are changing because I'm unbundling while I take away my tens. So this is a minus 10 pattern. 810 minus 10 is 800. 800 minus 10 is 790. 790 minus 10 is 780. 780 minus 10 is 770. Great job with your fluency today. Now we're going to do the problem for the day. Make sure you're following along in your packet. Let's read the problem together. Elijah runs 68 yards in a 100-yard race. How many more yards does he have to run? What do we know? What is the important information? We know that Elijah ran 68 yards in a 100-yard race. So we know that altogether the race is 100 yards, and he ran 68 yards of it. I'm going to draw this information in a number bond because that helps me remember what my whole is and what my part is. I know that it's a 100-yard race, so I'm putting 100 as my whole. I know that he ran 68 yards. I'm going to put 68 as my part. And then we don't know the missing part. What are we trying to find? We are trying to find how much more Elijah needs to run. And the unit is yards. So we are trying to find how many. Sorry, my handwriting is messy on this. How many more and then yards is the unit. How many more yards does Elijah need to run? Okay, let's look at the next box. How will we use the information to solve the problem? I'm going to look back at the number bond I made. When we are missing a part, do we add or subtract? Once you've decided if we should add or subtract, pause the video and write the equation you will use to solve the problem. I know that when we're missing a part, we subtract to find the missing part. In subtraction, we always start with the whole. So the equation I am going to write is 100 minus 68. And I made sure I lined up my tens and my ones so I can use the vertical strategy. Looking at this equation, I can already tell that we are going to have to unbundle because I have 0 tens and 0 ones, but I have to take away tens and ones. Finish solving the problem and send a picture of your work to your teacher. Make sure that you write your answer in a full second grade sentence, starting with a capital letter, ending with punctuation, and including the unit yards. Now for the rest of the lesson, we are going to focus on telling time, like you have been practicing in your packet. When we are telling time, the first thing we need to pay attention to is the hour hand. The hour hand is the smaller hand on the clock. Now, sometimes the hour hand is between two numbers. For example, in this picture, it's between the 9 and the 10. When it's between two numbers, you go to the number that comes before, the smaller number, and that's the hour. So here, the hour is 9. Step 2 for telling time is looking at the minute hand, the bigger hand, the longer hand. That tells you how many minutes have passed. But don't get tricked. Here I see the minute hand is pointing to 6, but it is not 9:06. That's not right. This time is not 9:06. That's wrong. When you're counting your minutes, you need to remember to count by fives. At 12, it's 0, so we start counting by fives at the 1. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. So this clock shows 9:30. I could also call that 9:30 because when the minute hand is at the 6 or at 30 minutes, that is halfway around the clock. Let's practice telling time some more. Here is my favorite mistake. Thank you to everybody who has been sending in your work. I noticed in some of your work some of the same mistake, so I wanted to go over it. Here's a picture of a clock. The time I wrote is 6:03. Take a minute to think. Why is this a mistake? What's the problem? The problem is that this student got confused with the hour hand and the minute hand. Remember, the hour hand is the short hand. Right now, I'm going to color the hour hand pink. That short hand right here is the hour hand. The long hand, I'm going to color blue. The hour always comes first when we're telling time. So the hour isn't 6. This is the minute hand pointing to the 6. Let's start by looking at where the hour hand is. I notice the hour hand is in between the 12 and the 1. Now I remember that if the hour hand is between two numbers, I go to the number that comes before. Here the number that comes before is 12. So my hour is going to be 12. Now let's look at our minutes. I know that it's not 12:06. That's the hour that is 6. We need to count by fives for the minutes. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. So this clock is 12:30. I could also say that it's 12:30 because the minute hand is halfway around the clock. Let's practice telling time a few more times together. Take a look at this clock. Let's start by finding the hour hand. I see the hour hand is the small hand right here. It's pointing to the 6. So it is 6. The hour is 6. The minute hand is the long hand. It's pointing to the 12. When the minute hand is pointing to the 12, 0 minutes have passed. So this time is 6 o'clock. Say it with me, 6 o'clock. Let's practice telling time with this clock. Will we start with the hour hand or the minute hand? If you said hour hand, you're right. Is the hour hand the long hand or the short hand? It's the short hand. Let's find the short hand. I'll color it pink. I see that the short hand is pointing in between two numbers. It's in between the 2 and the 3. Remember, if it's in between two numbers, the hour is the one that comes first. So it's going to be 2. The minute hand is pointing to the 3. But it is not 2, 3. When we count our minutes, we have to remember that our minutes are marked by these little lines and we can count them in fives. The 12 is 0 minutes, so we can start counting by fives at the 1. 5, 10, 15 minutes. This time is 2:15. We could also call that a 2:15. When it looks like this, the minute hand is a quarter of the way around the clock. Let's look at this clock now. See if you can find the hour hand by yourself. The hour hand is the shorthand in between the 11 and the 12. When we're telling the hour, we choose the hour that came first. So here it would be 11. The minute hand is the long hand. It's pointing to the 9. Remember, we are going to count by 5s, but we're not going to start at 12. We're going to start at 1. Let's count together. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. This time is 11:45. 11:45 is the same as a 11:45. We call it a 11:45 because the minute hand is 1/4 away from the next hour. Let's look at this clock now. Where is the hour hand? I see it in between the 12 and the 1. Remember, when it's in between two numbers, the number that comes first is what the hour is. So here it would be 12. The minute hand is halfway around the clock. Remember, halfway around the clock is 30 minutes because 30 is half of 60. So we can say that it's 12:30 or 12:30. Practice saying that with me. 12:30. Let's tell the time on one more clock. I see the hour hand is the short hand. Everyone find the short hour hand. I'll color it pink. It's in between two numbers. Is it going to be 3 or 4? It will be 3 because 3 comes first. Now let's look at the minute hand, the long hand. Remember, we have to count by 5s. Let's count by 5s together. 5, 10, 15, 20. It is 3:20. Great job telling time with me today. Please make sure you send your teacher pictures of your work. Way to go, second grade.